Why do people hurt the ones they love? Why do intelligent people sabotage themselves? Why do we keep repeating the same mistakes, even when we know better? Most of us move through life confused by human behavior. We take things personally. We get angry, disappointed, or betrayed without truly understanding what's happening beneath the surface. And before we go any further, if you want to understand people and yourself more deeply with every book, subscribe to the Book Day and become better than yesterday. This book, The Laws of Human Nature, begins with a hard truth. Humans are not as rational as they believe. We like to think we act logically, but in reality, emotions drive most of our decisions. Logic often comes later, used to justify what we already felt. Robert Greene wrote this book after decades of studying history, psychology, and real-life human behavior. What he discovered is simple but uncomfortable. Human nature does not change. Only the environment does. The same emotional patterns that shaped kings, queens, generals, and tyrants still shape co-workers, friends, leaders, and families today. One of the first ideas Greene introduces is that people live behind a mask. The mask is the version of ourselves we show to the world. Calm, kind, confident, reasonable, but beneath that mask lives a more complicated reality. Insecurity, fear, envy, anger, desire. These emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They operate quietly, influencing behavior from the shadows. Most conflicts begin because we judge people by their words while ignoring their emotional state. Someone says they're fine, but their actions are sharp. Someone claims loyalty, but their behavior shows resentment. Greene warns that if you take words at face value, you will always be misled. Behavior reveals truth. Another key idea in this opening is that humans are deeply emotional creatures who dislike admitting it. When emotions rise, self-control falls. People lash out, withdraw, manipulate, or sabotage without fully understanding why. Later, they create stories to justify their actions. This is not because people are evil, it's because they are unaware. Greene argues that the most dangerous people are not those who are openly aggressive, but those who lack self-awareness. When people don't understand their own emotions, they project them onto others. They blame, they accuse, they create drama, and often they genuinely believe they are right. The purpose of this book is not to make you cynical, it is to make you clear-eyed. When you understand human nature, you stop being surprised by behavior, you stop taking things personally, you stop reacting emotionally to emotional people. Just as important, this book turns the lens inward. Before you can understand others, you must understand yourself, your own triggers, your own blind spots, your own patterns. Without self-awareness, knowledge becomes dangerous. With it, knowledge becomes wisdom. Greene emphasizes that self-mastery is the highest form of power. If you can control your reactions, you cannot be easily manipulated. If you can observe emotions instead of obeying them, you gain freedom. This book is a mirror. It will show you people as they are, not as you wish them to be. And it will show you yourself, not to judge you, but to free you. One of the most important laws Robert Greene introduces early in the book is what he calls the law of irrationality. It explains a truth most people resist. We are far less logical than we believe. Humans like to see themselves as reasonable beings. We believe we think first and feel second. But in reality, the order is reversed. Emotion comes first, thought follows, and thought's main job is not to find truth, but to defend the emotion we already felt. This is why arguments rarely change minds. When someone feels threatened, embarrassed, or insecure, logic stops working. Facts bounce off emotional armor. People dig in, not because they are stupid, but because their identity feels under attack. Greene explains that emotions evolved to help us survive, not to help us reason clearly. Fear, anger, desire, envy. These emotions react instantly before conscious thought has time to intervene. In the modern world, this creates problems. We react to emails, comments, criticism, and setbacks as if they were life-or-death threats. The result is impulsive behavior. People send messages they regret. They make decisions in anger. They sabotage relationships to protect ego. They cling to beliefs because letting go would feel like losing themselves. The most dangerous part is that after acting emotionally, people don't say, "I reacted emotionally." Instead, they create a logical explanation. "I had to do it. They deserved it. It was the right decision." This self-justification makes irrational behavior repeatable. Greene's insight here is powerful. The problem is not emotion itself, but unconscious emotion. When emotions run the show without awareness, they hijack judgment. When emotions are observed, they lose much of their power. This is why Greene emphasizes the skill of emotional distance. Emotional distance does not mean suppression. It means pausing, stepping back, creating space between what you feel and what you do. Instead of reacting immediately, you observe the emotion. Why am I angry? Why does this bother me so much? What fear is being triggered right now? That pause alone can change outcomes. Greene also warns about emotional contagion. Emotions spread quickly. Anger fuels anger. Panic fuels panic. In groups, this effect multiplies. One emotionally reactive person can pull an entire team, family, or crowd into chaos. Those who remain calm gain quiet authority, not because they dominate, but because they stabilize. This is one of the book's most practical lessons. If you want to understand human nature, don't start by trying to control others. Start by controlling your reactions. When you are calm, you can see clearly. When you see clearly, you can choose wisely. Greene does not promise that emotions will disappear. They won't. What changes is your relationship to them. You stop obeying every impulse. You stop being dragged into unnecessary conflict. You become less predictable and more grounded. This law is foundational. Without mastering your own irrationality, every other law becomes dangerous. With mastery, understanding human nature becomes a tool for wisdom, not manipulation. As we move deeper into the laws of human nature, Robert Greene introduces one of the most uncomfortable but essential concepts in the book: the shadow. The shadow is the part of your personality you deny, suppress, or refuse to see. Traits like selfishness, envy, aggression, insecurity, need for control, or desire for attention. Society teaches us to hide these qualities and present a more acceptable image. Over time, we push the unwanted parts into the unconscious. But Greene warns us clearly, what you repress does not disappear, it leaks out. The shadow shows itself in indirect ways: passive aggression, sudden emotional outbursts, self-righteous behavior, secret resentment. People often criticize in others what they refuse to see in themselves. This is projection, and it causes endless conflict. For example, someone who denies their own ambition may attack others for being too selfish. Someone who suppresses anger may suddenly explode over small issues. Someone who sees themselves as kind may manipulate quietly while believing they are morally superior. The danger of the shadow is not that it exists. Everyone has one. The danger is lack of awareness. When people are unaware of their shadow, it controls them. When they are aware, they can channel it consciously. Greene explains that many toxic behaviors come from shadow possession. People believe they are acting rationally, but they are actually acting out suppressed emotions. This is why some individuals seem unpredictable or emotionally volatile. Their shadow has taken over. The solution is not denial, it is integration. Integration means acknowledging your darker traits without shame, accepting that you are capable of selfishness, anger, envy, and desire. When you admit these traits, they lose their destructive power. You can choose how to express them instead of being controlled by them. Greene uses history to show that those who accepted their shadow became more balanced and effective. They did not pretend to be saints. They understood their full nature and acted with self-awareness. This concept is especially powerful in relationships. When you understand your own shadow, you stop projecting it onto others. You become less reactive, less judgmental, more grounded. It also helps you read others better. When someone consistently accuses others of dishonesty, power hunger, or disloyalty, It often reveals something about their own internal struggle. Their words are clues. Their behavior tells the real story. Greene emphasizes that self-knowledge is protection. If you know your weaknesses, they cannot be used against you. If you know your emotional triggers, they lose their grip. If you accept your darker impulses, they don't need to sabotage you from the shadows. This part of the book asks for honesty, not perfection. The goal is not to become morally pure. The goal is to become conscious. When you shine light on the shadow, you reclaim power over yourself. One of the deepest insights in the laws of human nature is that adult behavior is often a continuation of childhood patterns. People may change roles, jobs, and environments, but emotionally, many are still responding to the world as they learned to respond early in life. Robert Greene explains that childhood is where emotional habits are formed, how love was given or withheld, how attention was earned, how safety was experienced or denied. These early experiences quietly shape how people seek approval, handle conflict, and react to stress as adults. Someone who grew up with unpredictable caregivers may become hyper-alert, always scanning for danger or rejection. Someone who was praised only for achievement may tie their self-worth entirely to success. Someone who felt ignored may crave attention or validation in unhealthy ways. The key idea here is not blame, it is pattern recognition. People repeat what feels emotionally familiar, even if it is painful. This is why someone might repeatedly choose the same type of partner, enter the same kind of conflicts, or sabotage progress at similar stages of success. The pattern feels known, and the known feels safe. Greene emphasizes that if you want to understand someone's present behavior, look for their emotional history. What situations trigger strong reactions? What makes them defensive? What makes them overreact? These are clues pointing back to unresolved experiences. This also applies to you. When something provokes a reaction that feels bigger than the situation deserves, it usually isn't about the present moment alone. It's about the past being activated. The emotion is old, even if the trigger is new. Greene warns that without awareness, these patterns repeat endlessly. People believe they are unlucky, cursed, or misunderstood. In reality, they are unconsciously recreating familiar emotional conditions. The power comes from making the unconscious conscious. When you recognize your patterns, you gain choice. You stop reacting automatically. You can pause and ask, is this about now or is this about then? This awareness is especially important when dealing with others. Understanding that someone's anger, withdrawal, or control issues often come from emotional wounds allows you to respond strategically instead of emotionally. You stop taking things personally that were never really about you. Greene also makes a critical point. Empathy does not mean tolerance of bad behavior. Understanding someone's past helps you predict behavior, not excuse it. Awareness allows you to set boundaries intelligently instead of reacting blindly. Those who understand emotional history gain a form of quiet power. They see patterns before they escalate. They recognize warning signs early. They don't get pulled into cycles they don't understand. This law teaches patience, but also clarity. People rarely change unless they become aware of their own patterns, and you cannot force that awareness onto them. What you can do is understand, prepare, and choose how close you allow them to be. As the laws of human nature moves into its more practical warnings, Robert Greene focuses on some of the most dangerous personality patterns you will encounter in life. These are not rare disorders. They are common traits that, when unchecked, quietly drain energy, create conflict, and pull others into emotional chaos. One of the most important patterns Greene explains is narcissism. Narcissistic people are not always loud or obvious. Some are charismatic and charming. Others appear insecure and self-critical. What unites them is an excessive need for attention, validation, and control over how they are perceived. At the core of narcissism is fragile self-esteem. Because they cannot regulate their own self-worth, they seek constant reinforcement from others. Praise energizes them. Criticism devastates them, and when they feel threatened, they often lash out, manipulate, or withdraw. Greene warns that narcissists are emotionally exhausting. They pull focus toward themselves. Conversations revolve around their feelings, their problems, their achievements. If you stop feeding their need for attention, resentment grows. Another destructive force Greene highlights is envy. Envy is one of the most denuded emotions, yet one of the most powerful. People rarely admit envy, even to themselves. Instead, it disguises itself as criticism, passive aggression, or concern. When someone envies you, they may smile while secretly hoping you fail. They may downplay your success or subtly undermine your confidence. Envy does not want equality, it wants advantage. Greene explains that envy becomes especially dangerous when it is unconscious. People who don't recognize their envy believe they are being fair or honest. In reality, they are acting out internal resentment. Another pattern is the toxic validation seeker. These individuals base their self-worth entirely on external approval, likes, praise, recognition, status. When validation flows, they feel alive. When it stops, they feel empty or angry. These people often shape their behavior to please others, but underneath, resentment builds. Over time, they may feel unappreciated, misunderstood, or exploited, even when no one intended harm. Greene's advice is not to judge these people, but to recognize patterns early. The earlier you notice emotional imbalance, the easier it is to protect yourself. Protection does not always mean confrontation. Often, it means distance, limiting emotional investment, not sharing vulnerabilities with those who weaponize information, not expecting empathy from those who lack it. Greene emphasizes an important rule. You cannot fix people who are unaware of their patterns. Trying to save, correct, or heal them often pulls you into their emotional gravity. Understanding human nature allows you to choose your relationships wisely. It helps you see when charm is a mask, when kindness hides control, and when admiration is actually dependence. The goal of this knowledge is not suspicion, it is clarity. When you see people clearly, you stop being surprised by behavior. You stop internalizing what was never personal. You conserve your energy for those who can meet you with balance. As the laws of human nature comes to an end, Robert Greene brings us back to the most important truth in the book. The greatest power you can have is power over yourself. Understanding others is useful, but without self-awareness, that knowledge becomes dangerous. It turns into manipulation, paranoia, or arrogance. Greene is clear that the final goal is not to control people, but to free yourself from unconscious reactions. Most people live on emotional autopilot. They react without reflection. They repeat patterns without noticing. They blame others for feelings they don't understand. This is not because they are weak. It's because no one taught them how to observe their inner world. Self-awareness changes everything. When you know your triggers, they lose power. When you understand your emotional habits, you stop being predictable. When you accept your shadow, it stops sabotaging you from behind the scenes. Greene emphasizes that emotional mastery does not mean becoming cold or detached. It means becoming less reactive and more intentional. You still feel emotions, but they no longer command you. You observe them, learn from them, and choose your response. This book ultimately teaches discernment, knowing when to engage and when to walk away, knowing when empathy helps and when it enables, knowing when silence is wiser than explanation. The person who understands human nature does not become manipulative. They become harder to manipulate. They see through masks. They recognize patterns. They stay emotionally steady in chaotic situations. And most importantly, they turn the same understanding inward. In the end, The Laws of Human Nature is not a book about others. It is a book about becoming conscious in an unconscious world. And that awareness is the foundation of wisdom, strength, and true freedom.